Welcome back. Now, in the last lecture, we talked about international business transactions, and key to that was this notion of expectations. What are the parties' expectations to the agreement? Well, the flip side of expectations are risks, and we talked about how those risks are magnified in the international context. Now, we said those risks can be any number of things. We talked about distance risk, logistics risk, currency risk, political risk. But generally, however, the risks that a sales transaction will encounter have to do with one of two categories. And the first category is problems with performance. There are performance problems. And the second category is unexpected conditions, conditions that were not as the parties expected them to be. Now, today we're going to focus on the notion of a contracting system. And a contracting system is designed to provide comfort for those entering into a business transaction. With a contracting system in place, we don't need to trust the other party. We don't need to know the other party. Instead, we only need to trust in the contracting system to be assured that the contracting system will do what it is that we think it will do. So we don't need to trust the other party in our business transaction as long as we have trust in the contracting system. So in the modern world, we need contracting systems. And why do we need that? Well, these contracting systems are going to provide for a number of things in order to give us that level of comfort necessary to go forward with an international business transaction, or in fact, any sort of business transaction. So what we're going to start with first is looking at the similarities between contracting systems. Although the contracting systems themselves may be very different, the contracting systems must provide for certain common features. And the first thing that a contracting system must do is allow the parties to assign risk. The whole purpose of a contract is essentially about assigning risk to one party or the other. Any of the risks that are present in the transaction, well, the assignment of those risks should take place in the contract itself. And the contracting system is what allows the parties to assign risks. Now, what are the risks? Now, we said they broke down into two categories. And the first category is performance risks. And performance risks can run from, on the one hand, non-performance. And non-performance in the part of a seller would be not delivering the goods. Or on the part of a buyer, it could be not paying for the goods that they receive. But certainly non-performance is a risk that the parties will have to account for. Now, another risk is late performance. Late performance can also be a risk. If I am in a manufacturing business, say I'm manufacturing bicycles and I need my bicycles in stores by the Christmas season. I want to get my bicycles out into the stores by the Christmas season, which I define as October 15th to November 30th. Well, if I have arranged for the shipment of steel frames to use in my bicycles, and those steel frames are going to come from China, well, the supplier in China may deliver appropriate frames, but if I don't get those frames until the end of October, I may not have bicycles available for sale until sometime late in November. I've missed the first 2 months of the Christmas season. So late performance can also be a problem. There's also the problem of unacceptable performance. Unacceptable meaning the party did not do what it promised to do. In that same hypothetical of the bicycles, If I receive the frames, but in fact the frames are damaged, or the frames are marred by sloppy welds, or the frames are simply painted the wrong color, well, in any of those cases, that would be unacceptable performance. I could not deal with that performance, and that's going to cost me as a manufacturer money. I'll either have to find substitute frames, or I'll have to send these back and arrange for a subsequent delivery of frames. Even early performance can be an issue. If one is engaged in in the construction business, for instance, and you're constructing, say, a large facility, say a refinery, well, you need products to be in inventory in order to be installed into the refinery just within a very narrow window. You don't want them too late, because obviously it's going to push you behind, it's going to delay the project. At the same time, you don't want those products too early. Why is that? Well, because you would have to find a place to store those products. You would have to save those products for later use, and that is going to increase your costs. You're going to have to put them in a warehouse. You're going to have to arrange for security. Early performance can be a problem as well. So those are the problems that we encounter with performance, and a contracting system must account for the possibility that those will occur. Now, there also can be problems with unexpected conditions, conditions that did not arise out of the foresight of either party. One of those is acts of God. Now, acts of God has a real legal definition, and it relates to factors that are beyond the control of either party. Moreover, those factors must have been unforeseeable at the time. So a warehouse burns down, maybe that's an act of God, or maybe it's not. A hurricane strikes and a flood occurs, and that floods the warehouse and causes late or no delivery. Well, perhaps that is closer to an act of God. So the question often with acts of God involve foreseeability, whether it was foreseeable, and if it's foreseeable, then perhaps it should have been in the contract to start with. But in any event, that's an unexpected condition that the parties did not assign the risk for in their contract. Unexpected costs, we saw this when we were talking about exchange risk, about currency risk, that costs can increase simply because the value of the money involved in the transaction increases. So costs can increase that way. There could be unexpected costs because of a labor shortage. There could be unexpected costs because of a labor strike that requires storage fees of a product that otherwise should have been on a ship. There's a number of unexpected costs that could arise. The flip side of that, of course, is diminished revenues, that the goods cannot be sold for what it is that the parties assumed the goods would be sold for. So diminished revenues is another unexpected condition. And simply market forces, where market forces are other than what the parties planned for. If the parties agreed on a shipment of oil, for instance, a commodity of oil, and they agreed to oil at one figure, say $60 a barrel, and yet then there is a war breaks out in the Middle East and oil shoots up to $100 a barrel. Well, the market is going to definitely affect both those parties to the agreement. The party who contracted to sell it for $60 is going to want to resell it to someone else for much higher. At the same time, the party that contracted to buy it from $60 is going to be focused on getting that deal, which in light of the present circumstances is probably unfair.